Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. America First with Sebastian Gorka, today at 3, right before Sean Thompson at 4 on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Did you catch the protesters accosting Trump's motorcade as he made his way to that Miami courthouse yesterday?
Oh, yeah. I couldn't. I was like must-see TV. I watched the whole time. And, yeah, there was one guy who, well, you'll hear it. He jumped in front of the motorcade. So they didn't really do a good job setting up barriers, separating the fans and protesters from former President Trump.
Yeah, there he is waving. He's waving. There he is. Thumbs up, Caitlin.
Oh, it's nice that Harvey Firestein can make it to the protest.
There, the police,
yeah, we can see him there.
The Secret Service now pulling someone. The Secret Service after someone ran. And obviously now the Secret Service pushed some people back, and the officers pushing people back.
Oh my God!
Wonderful play-by-play.
So a little chaos here, Caitlin.
That was followed by the customary 2 minutes hate. You know 2 minutes hate, the customary portion of the day where the faithful offer this protest.
But even as we grasp at victory, there is a cancer, an evil tumor, growing, spreading in our midst. Shout! Shout! Shout out his name!
You hear them calling traitor and death, right?
Yeah.
Goldstein. I mean Trump. And then after you're done with your performative 2 minutes hate, then it's time
For what?
for the love. It's time to embrace. Screech at the big screen with Trump, and then the orchestral music comes on for the embrace of Ingsoc. No, I mean the Biden administration. 1984.
Again.
For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Toby Young, General Secretary of the Free Speech Union, Editor-in-Chief of the Daily Sceptic. Toby, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We were just talking about gender ideology as a fundamentalist religion, referencing a piece done by Abigail Schreier. And it seems like the gender ideology is a denomination in the larger religion of Wokism. You wrote recently for the Catholic Herald about the religious nature of the New Left. What do you think? Does that make sense? Gender ideology specifically as a denomination or a sect in the larger calling?
Yeah, well, it's quite a disorganized religion. It's a church without a holy see, which is the body that stipulates what the orthodoxy is in the Catholic Church. So it's quite fluid, and it's quite hard, therefore, to determine what is a sect or a denomination and what is part of the broader religious movement or the church. But I think it's quite a useful way of looking at wokeism. It seems to have followed the same pattern as other great awakenings in our past. So periods in recent modern history in which Christianity has spread very quickly and with some fervor via evangelical movements, both in Britain and America. And typically they have a sort of 50-year lifespan. but sometimes they're a little bit shorter. So if the Great Awakening is seen in that context, and if we accept that social media has probably accelerated its rise, if we think of it as the first new religion of the 21st century, and we think of it as happening on the same sort of timescale, but perhaps a little bit accelerated to previous Great Awakenings, then it looks as though it started around 2013 and is peaking now, and hopefully will have largely faded out by 2033.
Well, it fills a void, right? I mean, this is happening concurrent to the decline in Christianity and adherence to any of the faith traditions, with maybe the exception of Islam, but the decline of Americans identifying with the Judeo-Christian values and the institutions that promote those values upon which the country is founded, as Chesterton famously said, when people stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing, they believe in anything, and here comes the anything.
Yes, I mean, I think there's certainly something to that theory, and one corroborating piece of evidence that the God-shaped hole left by the ebbing away of the Christian tide is that the most energetic, zealous promoters of the religion of wokeism are upper middle class white women. And amongst that demographic, church attendance has fallen more dramatically in the past 25 years than any other demographic. So it does seem to be playing that role for them. But against that theory, we ought to take into account that merely being a Christian doesn't necessarily give you robust antibodies to this new religion.
Yeah.
There are plenty of Anglicans in Britain who are, woker than woke, and they think embracing this new religion as a way of filling the pews in their church and making Anglicanism relevant to a younger generation. And they also seem to be they just seem to have been swept up by the woke religious movement. They think they need to decolonize their churches, take down plaques and statues which have some connection to the slave trade. They preach about anti-racism. They change the lyrics of hymns to make them more inclusive. Catholics seem to have slightly more robust antibodies, and that's, I think, one reason, not the only reason, but one reason why the woke religion has spread less quickly on the continent of Europe because of its Catholic rather than its Protestant heritage. English-speaking countries, I think, are particularly vulnerable because of their Protestant heritage, including the United States, and it has a lot in common with nonconformist Puritan religious movements of the past. But it does seem to be spreading into the continent of Europe, France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, in the last couple of years. It's almost as though the spread was delayed, but finally the virus, the woke mind virus, as Elon Musk calls it, is overcoming the Catholic antibodies and infecting vast swathes of people across continental Europe.
Well, as a priest friend of mine said once, which stuck with me, speaking to the point of, you can have Christians that don't have the antibodies that fall prey to the wokeism as a religion, even while they still identify as Christian. Well, he said, many attend church, few understand. So even churchgoers may not have quite a handle on the rigors of the religion to which they identify. And there's a lot of people, as you well know, who sort of look at religion as something that, even if they consider their faith tradition as something that you can deal with on an a la carte basis. I'll take a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but I won't be here. And the cultural power over the top that is antagonistic towards organized religion, particularly Christianity, that has an impact, particularly on the young as well.
Yes, it does. I mean, the speed with which wokeism has captured the sort of commanding heights of the cultural economy is really quite astonishing. I mean, it seemed to have begun life. The lab where this ideology was manufactured were grievance studies departments in Ivy League universities, but there's been a lab leak, and it's now infected virtually every institution in Britain and America, including the armed forces, the intelligence services, places where you wouldn't expect them to be particularly vulnerable to this kind of hard left, postmodern, neo-Marxist gobbledygook. But by God, it seems to have found fertile ground, even in what we thought of as the most robust parts of our society. Going back to your earlier question, I think one of the roles that the kind of militant trans wing of the woke religion plays is that expressing your fealty to trans rights activists' dogma, claiming that, you can't see that the person standing before you is a man or a woman. You have to wait for them to announce their gender pronouns, denying that sex is binary and immutable, pretending there is this kind of powerful reason to embrace trans ideology because some people are born intersex, and even some other species seem to have intersex characteristics like ants. I mean, it's all complete nonsense, but I think the fact that it's nonsense and the fact that it requires its adherents to deny reality, deny what they can see in front of their faces with their own eyes, that's part of its power, because you're asking people to do something inherently ridiculous and intellectually humiliating. It's a way for them to express their fealty to the cult. It's a way for them to say, I am now such a devotee. I am such an observant member of this new church. I'm willing to prostrate myself before its altar and humiliate myself by spouting absolute nonsense.
Well, also,
I think that's part of the role it plays.
Well, sure, and also it's sacramental. I mean, you have to receive the sacraments if you want to be saved.
That's true. That's true. There are a lot of sacraments. I mean, another is engaging in racial self-flagellation.
Right.
So
Right.
that seems to be one of the rituals that you're required to perform regularly in order to be an upstanding member of the woke church. It also has its own liturgy. There's Black History Month, Pride, although we are referring at the moment to June as Pride Month, but I've heard other activists refer to the summer of Pride as though one
Sure,
month.
why not?
It's the
Nearly
year
allotting
of Pride.
1 month.
Well, there's an
Yeah,
event
so-
every day and every month except for August, which I'm sure is going to be changing. But is
That'll
that
be
like
changing
that
soon.
over there where you are? Is this Pride Month?
Yeah, you cannot escape the pride flag. You leave your house, it's it's virtually someone following you around, waving it in your face. But yeah, we may look back on this era in which we only had a Pride Month rather than a Pride Year as a golden era, in which there were occasional moments in which someone wasn't waving a pride flag in your face.
Well, the other thing this raises too is the way we think about politics, and you have people. I'm not a part of the culture warrior set. I'm not involved. I'm not worried about social issues. I'm just worried about economic issues, or I'm not worried so much about economic or trade issues. I'm just worried about moral issues. Those are false dividers, because if you're dealing with something that is religious in nature, then it's going to inform all aspects of life, and that's going to be the intent of its adherents.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. I mean, people who think that there is a kind of Chinese wall separating social culture war issues from economic issues probably haven't been in the workforce for some time, because anyone in the workforce will tell you that they are constantly being asked to engage in various forms of diversity training, such as unconscious bias training, anti-racism training, which are, virtually they're the 21st century equivalent of sending people to Chinese communist re-education camps. Lots of major companies now have commitments to ESG, which is their way of professing how woke they are. We saw with the debacle of Bud Light entering into a sponsorship arrangement with Dylan Mulvaney, that the idea you can separate economic activity from social activity is for the birds. The two are now absolutely inextricable. Woke has conquered the private sector just as it has the public sector.
Toby Young, General Secretary of the Free Speech Union, Editor-in-Chief of the Daily Sceptic. Toby, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Balance of Nature's fruits and vegetables in a capsule, changing the world one life at a time.
Honey, I am like a different woman. I mean, finally one day I kept seeing that commercial and I said, what the heck, what do I got to lose? I started feeling a little bit better. I was doing more things. So I got my sister on them. I got my daughter on them.